Hello, welcome one and welcome all to episode 7 of the Black Diamond Podcast. I am your host, Chris Hecker. I told you last week that more reinforcements were going to be on the way. So we've made a call into the MI pipeline. We were going to leave them down there a little longer, manipulate the service time. And really wait until the situation was perfect. But some roster turmoil, kind of forced our hand. So we're calling them up early. We have Jerry. I'm sorry, dude. I'm blanking on your last name.
That would be Durney, but
Jerry Durney. We have Jerry Durney joining the show. Jerry has been called up, and he now has a chance to make an impression and make himself part of our everyday lineup. So, welcome, Jerry. And if you would like to introduce yourself and tell us about yourself and your background in baseball, all that fun stuff, and then we'll get into it.
well, first off, Chris, I heard about that service time manipulation. I'm going to let my associate, Mr. Boris, know about that. You'll be hearing from him in a few weeks about that. But no,
All right,
I've been.
so it'll be so you will get a 1-year deal and you will like it.
Again, this is on tape. So, but I've been here on the part of the Ascension Podcast Network before with Case, Kev, and a few others, and actually, I believe we did a Black Diamond podcast a couple years back. I know we did some with Doug Williams. We've had on from SNY. Our friend Chris Williamson's been on here as well. So haven't been a regular here, but a little bit familiar with the fellas here, and love being a part of this, and love being able to talk baseball with you, with Case, with Kev. It's always a good time, and I love being able to talk, especially knowing the Met contingent that's part of the Ascension Podcast Network. So I do enjoy that. For those that may be new here or haven't heard me before, I live about an hour southeast of Orlando, so I get to see a lot of spring training stuff. There's the Florida State League, which has been a long time fixture around here. I've got to be involved around minor league baseball with a few of the teams that are close to where I live. I actually got to work with the St. Lucie Mets a while back, which was a highlight for me, getting to do stuff with them. And we used to have a Brewers affiliate about 20 minutes from where I live. Got to broadcast games for them for a year. That one of the highlights of my life is getting to be a part of that. I work now for a Division II school called Florida Tech right here, which is, again, I live in Melbourne, which is about an hour southeast of Orlando. It's not that far from the Kennedy Space Center if you're looking for another familiar point on the map. So I get to be involved in sports of all kinds, but baseball's my first love, probably my truest love, because when people find out what teams I root for, they'll always ask, okay, so what do you want? And I always will tell them a Met World Series would be life-changing because they've won in my lifetime. I was a month old when it happened last. So I would like to see one before society stops existing, which
you might be running out of time. So, we've had, me and Case have discussed at length the last couple of episodes that, while Steve Cohen has this whole, while he has this whole 2-year, 3-year plan or whatever he calls it, that they should really take advantage of what they have in front of them now and just go for it. And I didn't even really have the societal collapse of America and the world like in mind, but that is a good point, and should probably give them and their front office a little bit more of a sense of urgency as the trade deadline approaches, which we are only 3 weeks away from.
Yeah, like knowing what followed, man, do I really wish they had won in 2015. Like, one, not just because it would have been cool, but like, two, I would have been less stressed out about everything else in the world, because it'd be like, they're burning the Capitol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Who cares?
Project 2025 is happening today. They won.
Yeah. I could die tomorrow. It's fine.
And I don't mean to be but so glib about it, but it's one of those things, I guess, I feel like Cubs fans, I think, probably could appreciate more than most is like, all right, cool. I saw one. And that's kind of how I feel with the Mets is when you watch the rest of your division win.
Yeah.
Well, the last few years have been tough watching Washington get one, the Braves get one, the Phillies are right there.
Yeah, I mean, even the Marlins have gotten two that you were like cognizant for, that you
it's
knew
like,
what planet you were on.
yeah, you're like, so when do we get one? Like,
Right.
and even the Marlin one, it's funny. So where I grew up, the Marlins had their spring training here for the first part of their history. So when they won their first one, it was like, oh, cool. We actually knew, like this, they had their minor league team here. So it was like we knew who Edgar Renteria was. So it was like when the Marlins won that first one, it was like, oh, cool. Florida got a World Series. That's awesome. And when they got the second one as a Met fan, Chris, and I apologize. Hey, the Marlins beat the Yankees. How about that? and
Yeah.
now in retrospect, it's like, okay, now it's not so funny anymore. Like, all right, we're gonna reset that clock soon, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be our turn. But yeah, I mean, no apologies necessary. I mean, obviously, when it comes to when it comes to baseball, obviously, I can't really relate to that feeling. Obviously, I don't want to not to be like facetious or anything, but the Yankees really are the only team that's provided me any sort of happiness when it comes to sports. I mean, but I definitely feel the same way when it comes to other sports, like particularly when it comes to the Jets. You give me one Jets Super Bowl and I'll be good for life. I don't really have to. The world could end the next day. I don't really have to watch another football game again after that. Just give me one. So I could definitely relate to that. And, living in Pittsburgh and knowing a lot of Pirates fans, I know, like the younger ones that are like kind of around like our age demographic, definitely, they definitely share that sentiment. They want to see their team win at some point. It sucks when you have like an owner that's, not really that doesn't really care about that. I guess you could.
I sympathize with that very much.
Yeah. But let's dive into a little bit. So obviously the Yankees have provided some happiness to me. In past years, it would be nice to get a World Series that I'm like legally able to drink for. But let's get into the Yankees of present day. After starting out the season really fucking good, they are now playing really fucking bad baseball. They are 6-16 in their last 22 games. It's the worst record in baseball over that period. They're currently losing 4-1 to the Tampa Bay Rays. Pretty much every aspect of the team, they look lost. Like pretty much all their hitters not named Aaron Judge look lost at the plate right now. There's no bullpen depth. The starting pitching is starting, with the exceptions of like Cole and Heel, the starting pitching is very shaky, and just a lot of like boneheaded, lackadaisical, like lazy plays. DJ LeMahieu had to play. I was watching the game earlier. The Yankees were up 1-0, and I fell asleep on my couch for like 20 minutes, and then I wake up and we're losing 4-1. And then the first thing I see is someone hits a ground ball to third base, and DJ tried to field it, and the ball just went off his glove and into left field. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go record this podcast now because I don't really want to watch this. But yeah, it's just been, a pretty big mess over the, over the past month or so. They haven't won 2 games in back-to-back games since like the beginning of June. So obviously, the Yankees go on like a 2 or 3 game losing streak, the fans start to panic and lose their shit because they don't know how to handle it. But from an outside perspective, I guess, what would you say your perspective is on this Yankees slump?
Well, it's always, you never like having these in the middle point of the season because, especially when you've had a start like that and you feel like everything's everything's great. Hey, we've got two of the best hitters in baseball. We can't lose. And you can't go back to that, and you can't get to the end of the year where you're going to be. You're just kind of stuck right now. And these are always the slumps that stink, because it's just like, you're too far away for it to know whether it mattered or not. But I think you can also look back at every team ever that's won a World Series. I mean, like, say for maybe the 98 Yankees, who, won 114 or 15. And you can look at any point in their season and go, oh, wow, they actually went through it for about 3 or 4 weeks there. I mean, you look at Texas last year. Texas, I think for at least the entire month of August, it was like, oh, they're frauds. Like, oh, wow, they got swept at home by that team. Like, oh, the Astros just came in and put 24 runs on them in 3 games. Yeah, we don't have to take them serious. I think every team at some point, even when you win, you're going to have that stretch where you're just like, man, does this team even deserve to be in the playoffs? I mean, it happens to even the best of them. So you've just got to be able to ride it out. Now, I do think, from the complaints that I do hear from Yankee fans about what's gone wrong in this stretch, that doesn't mean they're not invalid. And I see it with, from Kev on the timeline a lot, but I do think it's fair to say, hey, look, yes, we do have the 2 best hitters in baseball. It's fair to look at the rest of that lineup and go, okay, are they going to have to do all of the lifting? They can do the heavy lifting. That's why you have them. But eventually, especially when you get to the games that really matter in September and October, like, hey, Judge and Soto can't take all 9 at bats. Eventually, you've got to count on 1 or 2 more other guys that you can feel comfortable with in a big spot late, or say a big spot in the 5th inning where it's, hey, we got bases loaded, tie game here. We can break this open. You've got to have at least 1 or 2 more guys in that lineup where you can go, all right, I feel comfortable with him being up there. I think if you look at the Astros, it's, yeah, you have Jordan and Altuve and Bregman, but then you have Kyle Tucker and you have the other guys in that lineup where you'd be like, okay, or Yanier Diaz. There's a litany of guys. They may not have a perfect 1 through 9 lineup. Or you look at the Orioles. Yeah, you want to have Rutschman up there, or Gunnar Henderson, or Cedric Mullins, or any number of guys. But there's also 3 or 4 other guys in there where you're like, I wouldn't want to see him up there late in the game. I used to always say this about the late 90s, early 2000 teams. It felt like there was any guy in that lineup where you're like, it could be Tino Martinez. Oh, you don't want to see him up there late. It could be Bernie Williams. You don't want to see him. It's Paul O'Neill. You don't want to see him. You got to have – you may not have a perfect 1 through 9 lineup like that, but it can't just be 2 guys. Because I think back to the series they had with the Mets a few weeks ago, and it felt like the entire series was make someone besides 22 and 99 beat us, and they couldn't. And I'm sure teams are taking notes on that, because it's, if I don't have to pitch to Soto and Judge, why would I?
Yeah,
and it seems to be working. The complaints about the rotation I get to, Cole I can understand at least, because that's a pretty serious injury that he was able to avoid surgery for. Also, he's got the workload that he already has in his career up to this point. I mean, we still think of him as a relatively younger guy, but he's been up since 2013, and he's been a workhorse type guy that entire time. And then behind him, you have Hill, who's been good, but this is the first year for him where it's, all right, we're really counting on you to be a frontline guy. We'll see how that goes for him. Rodon, I know tonight didn't go well for him. And then from there on, it's, can I count on any of these guys in a game that matter? And then with the bullpen, and Kevin and I have talked about this before, it's nobody's happy with their bullpen ever. Unless you have Mariano Rivera, you're always going to have someone where you can even have a great closer. You may not have a great bridge to get to him, where any guy that comes in past the 6th inning, you're going to be terrified of. So I think it's one thing to look at this team and go, yeah, they have the record they do. If they're very serious about being able to finish this off and get to the World Series and win it, it's, yeah, you probably need 1 more arm in the rotation. You probably could get 2 or 3 more guys in that bullpen to help you out. I understand why, we're in the dog days, so you do need a little bit of perspective, but also it doesn't mean that the concerns that the fans that watch them every day, that doesn't mean they're not invalid.
Yeah, no, I think, I think you made some really good points. And like right now, Soto's been kind of in a bit of a slide, and even Judge didn't have, the greatest weekend against Boston, and I don't really think he's done anything yet in this game. So even they're gonna like hit their
Right.
rough patches. So, and just pretty much the rest of the lineup is just like a black hole. I mean, Ben Rice, Ben Rice has looked pretty good at times. He's shown flashes. He had the 3 home run game the other day over the weekend against Boston, and obviously like that was really cool. And it's nice to see what he's done since Rizzo got hurt and since he's gotten called up. It's because it's kind of like, all right, that might be like one less thing we need to worry about, like as we try to like solidify the team, as the trade deadline approaches. So that's nice, but it's still like he's a rookie call up, so you really don't know, what you're going to be getting, and it's hard to, it's hard to really, it's hard to really count on him, especially when October comes and the pitching that you're facing gets that much better. But I mean, aside from that, like Verdugo and cleanup, he's just been a black hole. They've gotten virtually nothing out of him. Gleyber Torres started the season out horrendously. He kind of had a few weeks where he turned it back on, but he's kind of come back down to down to earth, or below earth, I guess you could say. And then you have 2 catchers, neither of which can really hit, and one of them who can't even really throw, which was that was a weakness.
That was the most surprising thing to me.
That was a weakness the Red Sox were able to expose in our first series. And then Volpe. So Volpe, like, I feel like Volpe could be that, one of those other guys that you want to be confident or should be one of those guys, but he just, something isn't there with him. I mean, he's very, he's very hot and cold. I think that they may have, they may be messing around with him too much as far as like his, where they're batting him in the lineup, because he started the season out batting like 7th, and now he's batting 7th again. And when he was batting 7th, he was doing really well. And then, the Yankees decided, all right, like, let's make you the leadoff guy, which I thought at the time, at the time I had mixed feelings about it. Part of me was like, don't mess with like what's been working, but also like I get it because he's fast and he gets on base, and that's like the kind of guy you want leading off. But then I think his main problem is just that he is the plate discipline with him. He swings at too many, he swings at too many pitches that it's just like, bro, like, what are you seeing? And he'll do it in like counts where, like, it'd be one thing if, like, if he was down in the count and, if it was 2-strike approach was bad, then, that would be one thing that would be like a little more understandable, like, still something you want to work on, but that you could live with. But he'll be in like a 2-0 count, and then like they'll throw like a changeup in the dirt and he'll chase it and like end up grounding out. So it's stuff like that really, so it's stuff like that that's like really been like killing him, and really killing the lineup. And then Grisham, and Grisham, he gets like, he has like, I don't know, 5 hits this year, and I think 3 of them are home runs. And then DJ LeMahieu, there's really, I don't know what more there could, I don't really know what more to say about DJ LeMahieu that hasn't been said. That's just like of all the black holes in the lineup, that is the, that is the probably the worst one.
Kev's about to bust through the door saying, "I'll say it for you."
Please do.
Please, what is there to be said about DJ LeMahieu? I will say it.
Very true. I'm sure he's probably, I'm sure he's probably gotten at least 1 or 2 tweets off about it so far in this game. And it's only the 7th inning. The Yankees did put up 2 runs though, so they're only losing 4-3 now. So, maybe I just need to keep talking shit about them and will their way to victory.
My thing with Volpe, I think that just the trouble for him is that obviously you have Judge come in and have the rookie year that he did in 2017, but I think people forget he came up at the back end of 2016. He looked lost. Like he had the minor league numbers, obviously, and he had the trait. So people knew, okay, there might be something there. But I think he played 30 or 40 games that first year up, and he had like 130 or something to that degree. So there was nothing based on those first 30 to 40 games where it was, okay, yeah, this guy might set every home run record imaginable.
Right.
It's just the hard part of being, Volpe had all this hype coming into last year, and you're on a team that they're trying to win right now. And I think that's been amped up even more this year, having Soto in there, and you've got Cole coming off the Cy Young. So it's, hey, if this kid's supposed to be the next Jeter, let's see it.
That and too, like he has I think like from day one they're expecting him to be Derek Jeter. So it's like, yeah, he has a lot of undue pressure on him too. But I mean, you kind of know that, being in New York and being on the Yankees, you kind of know what you're signing up for as far as that goes.
I mean, and that's true. But I think if it was a thing where if it was, hey, look, if the Yankees have like a 84, 85 win ceiling this year, I think there would still be expectations on him, but I think the highs and lows wouldn't be nearly as scrutinized as they are. And I can relate to this somewhat being a New York Ranger fan. We had Alexi Lafreniere as a number one pick. First couple of years, they were trying to turn him into a completely different player with, as it turns out, bad coaching. They bring in a new coach this year that did challenge him to be better in certain areas, but was more like, no, look, here's what you need to do. Now go out and be you.
Right.
And he turned into a 30-goal scorer. He started looking like the player that we all thought he would be as a number one pick. But he was being challenged immediately where it wasn't just that the Rangers, had earned the number one pick by being flat out terrible. They won a COVID interrupted lottery. Like they got very lucky that they had the number one pick. So here was a team that was kind of decent. And here you're going to get this number one pick dropped in your lap. And it's, hey, look, you got to play like a number one pick right now for a team that's trying to win. I think it's easier to have that learning curve and those bumps in the road when it's, hey, this team's trying to figure it out together. And then we'll all hit our peak together. Volpe walked into a situation where it's, hey, you got to be that guy right now, right off the bat at 21, 22 years old, at a position where, they haven't really filled that spot since Jeter in terms of having a guy that's there for 10 years every single day, and they think he can be that guy. So when you have those ups and downs, it's a lot more scrutinized. You see people talking about, oh, should he be a leadoff hitter? Should he be that? He's hit, again, I don't think he's been a great hitter since he came up, but I don't think he looks lost out there. Like, I mean, we see plenty of guys that go out there and hit 180, 190, especially with the numbers league-wide being down offensively. He's looked all right. He could be better, certainly, but he's got the glove at least. So you're like, okay, if he just refines his bat a little bit, is he going to be a 10-time All-Star? I don't know. We never know how these things shake out. Could he at least be an above-average starter? I think that is very attainable for him.
Yeah, and I think that is the goal, and he's gonna be there because of he's gonna be like I think he will be an everyday starter mainly because of his glove. But I guess it's just a matter of, and I think that most of his deficiencies at the plate are things that are correctable. But I do question not so much Aaron Boone, because I think, like, I don't know, Aaron Boone, I could take him or leave him. I don't think that the manager, I think these days in baseball, I don't think the manager makes too much of a difference. Like, all you really have to do is just have your players back, be there for them. Like there's a lot of people saying oh, Boone needs to go and trash these players or stop defending them or hold them accountable. It's you hope he's doing that behind closed doors, but it's you're not going to go out and say to the media, oh yeah, Anthony Volpe sucks and he needs to learn how to hit.
What made Joe Torre great? I could say this as an outsider. Did we think that Joe Torre was some wizard in terms of game strategy? No. But the most important thing he did was keep all the nonsense away. He just let the guys go out and play. And when you're a team that is of that caliber and has that kind of talent around you all the day or around you every day, you just need to let them be able to go out there and do their jobs and not have to be hounded about, whatever may be going on off the field or whatever kind of drama that, is perceived in the locker room, he was always able to keep that at arm's length. I think that's still to a large part the most important thing a manager can do is, hey, look, if I've got to handle the bullpen or whatnot, hey, look, we'll worry about that when we get there. Whatever's going on outside of this locker room doesn't concern me, and it shouldn't concern you. You're good enough to be here. You play every day. Just go play. And I think that was the most important thing. Like, everything we ever heard about the Yankees for the longest time was, it wasn't just that they were good. There was a world of messiness going on around them. That generally was kept away while Joe Torre was the manager. I kind of feel like that's a blueprint for what a Yankee manager should be, especially now, because it feels like things are even more hyper in that world now, in terms of any little thing becomes a wildfire now, even more now than when he was the manager.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially just with like how much more social media there is, and all that stuff. Obviously social media, it's like a beautiful thing. It's it's allowed me and you the opportunity to do this podcast together here, and I've met, obviously we both met Case and Jude and Kevin, everyone through it. But at the same time, as an athlete, yeah, that's something. As like an athlete or a manager, that's like hard to imagine, like balancing that. And like, yeah, so we know that that was something that Joe Torre was like very good at, even in the non-social media era. I kind of almost makes me wonder, like, how would he be as a manager, like in today's like very online climate, especially with like younger athletes that are like, a lot of them are like a lot more like chronically online.
So let me get this straight. You've gone 0 for 13, and you're telling me they put you in the picture where you hit the Hindenburg out of the sky. Wait, what is this?
Yeah,
they had you in the foxhole with Saddam Hussein. Anthony, were you in the foxhole with Saddam? You were 3. Oh, all right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Anthony.
This was you. Wait, this is you at the Capitol on January 6th. Yeah,
Josh Donaldson, you told me. Actually, no, that could have happened.
Yeah, that probably did happen. Whatever.
DJ, you told me you were on vacation. It's January 6th. Why would you be in Washington? Oh, they altered. Okay.
Well, if DJ's saying it, I don't believe him. He was 100% there. Not that it matters, because like it's not like any of those people are going to get in trouble anyway. But that's a different story. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of make me wonder. And like, I mean, yeah, as far as Boone goes, like, I don't know, like if you fire him, they're probably just gonna bring in someone else that is just gonna kind of do the same thing and be a puppet for like what the organization wants to do. And that's kind of like the way of baseball now. Like, it's like all the teams are kind of doing it this way with the analytics and with with managers that are you're not necessarily getting like the drill sergeant managers anymore. So it kind of is what it is. So I don't know how much of a difference it would really make. Like, I'm not super high on Boone, but I don't really know how much of a difference firing him would make. Maybe you consider it just to like give your team a little spark or a little kick in the ass. But that seems a little bit drastic. But I do wonder about like their philosophy towards hitting, like as an organization, like as a coaching staff, because it seems like everyone outside, I think Kev was talking about this in the Discord the other day, how like everyone outside of Soto and Judge, it seems like they are basically teaching them and training them to be contact hitters, which just doesn't.
I can empathize with that.
Yeah, which just doesn't make any sense. Like, for the stadium that you play in, like, why wouldn't you just be trying to hit pop flies to right field and hope that they go out?
I mean, just the general nature of baseball today. It was a thing. It was a complaint I had with the Mets over the last 2 seasons. Was it felt like we were trying to win games, and by stringing 7 to 8 hits in a row. And that's just not how the game works now. The strikeout numbers are too good. These pitchers throw too hard. Their off-speed stuff is too hard. Like, even if you have a great lineup, like, it just doesn't work that way. And I mean, you can go back, I would say at least a decade. Every team that's won the World Series had to be a credible power threat to some degree. You look at the Rangers last year. You had Adolis Garcia. You have Seager. I mean, Evan Carter was last year. I know he hasn't played well this year, but he certainly was last year.
Especially in the playoffs. He was on
the
fire.
The Astros, by whatever means we think they got it, the Astros were a power-hitting team. The Braves are certainly a power-hitting team. The Dodgers had power hitters up and down their lineup. The Nationals, when they really needed it, had guys that could take it deep. You have to be a credible threat where I just can't leave this. I can't even think about going over the middle. I can't even think about trying to run inside lest I get taken yard. And it's been kind of refreshing to watch the Mets this year in that respect, where I don't think you can be a team that's strictly swinging for the downs either, because you become too predictable and you become too strikeout heavy. And I mean, I think you have to be able to have guys on base, because if you just hit a bunch of solo home runs, you can still get beat. I think if you're a team that's consistently putting guys on base and letting your power hitters do what they do, you can win a lot of games 8-5 or 7-6. I mean, the Astros have made a killing doing exactly that. So I see Kev talk about that a lot. And I do think, you'd like to have well-rounded hitters. I think that's important. But it's important, especially with the way the game is played now and the way strategy is dictated mostly through the sport. You've got to have guys that pitchers are supposed to be afraid of. And if it's, hey, okay, they're going to hit 3 or 4 singles in a row, all right, I'm going to trust my defense with the way that defense is optimized now.
Yeah, even without the shift,
I can pitch to contact. I'll live with that.
Yeah, even without the shift, like, every player has like a card in the back of their pocket that tells them like exactly where to be. I actually only noticed it for the first time like this year, and like I thought the dude was like, I was sitting in right field at a Guardians game, and like I saw the dude like pull something out of his back pocket. I was like, is he on his phone right now? Because it's kind of like it kind of looks like a phone, and I was like, oh, it's like the and then it's like, oh, okay, that's the telling them like where to, like, for every hitter, like, and I'm pretty sure they probably have like, they probably have different things for like, all right, like if this hitter's facing a righty, stand here. If this hitter's facing a lefty, move over a little bit, things like that. So yeah, like even with taking the shift out, there's so much data that it's like you can still find ways to align your defense in a way that's effective. But there's no defense for a ball that's hit 500 feet. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure what the exact stat is, but I think like there's like an overwhelming percentage, the team that outslugs another team, like out homers them in a playoff series, like they pretty much almost always win that series.
I think the last time that there was not a home run reliant team was the 2015 Royals. They had 2 home runs in the World Series. They were in game 1. And that will be burned into my brain until we get one. And one didn't even leave the park. It was an inside the park home run.
That's right. That was wasn't that like the very that was at the very begining of the game, right?
It was the first. It was the first Escobar, because he always swung on the first pitch.
That's right. Yeah, that memory's starting to. I'm sure it's etched in your brain, but it's just starting to come. It's just starting to come back for me. I do remember that. That's
it's crazy. One of my very good friends is a Royals fan. He loves bringing that up, but he's also a Chiefs fan. But I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, so we're even.
You guys are even until further notice, I guess.
He doesn't like bringing up I don't like when he brings up the 9th inning of Game 5 and Matt Harvey, and he doesn't like when I bring up the Antoine Winfield.
That was a pretty cold moment. But yeah, I mean like aside from that Royals team, which was basically like they're like the antithesis of like a World Series winning team, and then
the small ball team.
Yeah. And they just, they managed to do that. But that was, but that was 10 years ago, and we really haven't seen any team do anything like that ever since. So, it's pretty clear like where the game is going. It's the three true outcomes are like pretty much what dominates. Are pretty much what dominates and decides these games. It's who's who can out slug, who can out homer their opponent.
Especially with the DH in the NL now.
Yeah, it's all about like who can out homer their opponent. What pitchers can overpower their opponents, and what batters have like the most discipline to get on base. So and for the Yankees being so like, everyone talks about how heavily they rely on analytics. Like, you would think that they would employ more of a strategy that that is like linear with the trends of the game, but it seems like they're it does kind of seem like they're stuck in this like I don't know what the word is, but they're kind of stuck. Maybe it's like they're stuck in this like conundrum of like, all right, like, do we want it? Because I feel like they tried the whole home run or bust thing, and like it didn't really work, and now they're like trying to dial it back by like making all their young hitters like, and pretty much everyone that's not Soto and Judge, like trying to make everyone like a contact hitter. And it's like there's got to be there's got to be some sort of happy medium. Like I don't really know. I don't know what the answer is. The past couple of episodes, me and Case kind of spoke ad nauseum of, what moves they can make at the deadline to improve, and this, that, and everything else. But I think that something in their approach needs to change, especially when you do see certain players. Another fan favorite for Kevin, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I mean, he was he was a black hole in our lineup, and now I'm not going to say he's a good player with the Blue Jays, but he looks a lot better.
He's not a zero.
Yeah, he's not a complete zero with the Blue Jays. So it does make me wonder, like, what the philosophy is, or what the what the player development and what the coaching staff is up to in that sense.
And it's so crazy because we talked about, you do want to have complete hitters. You don't want to be home run or bust types because it's easy to game plan for that. But, and I know this, it may sound like I'm just saying, oh, simply be the 90s or 2000s team. And I know that might be a cop out, but when you look at that lineup, you have Bernie Williams, who could hit 300, but also was absolutely a guy that you couldn't leave something for, because Bernie Williams could absolutely take you deep. Jeter home runs if you needed. You had Matsui, and then later on you have Giambi, and you'd have Tino, and you'd have Soriano. I can look at the history of all those Yankee teams for 20 years, and it never felt like you looked at the lineup and went, oh, well, that guy's just a singles hitter. We'll take our chances there. You always had to pick carefully to every single guy in that lineup. And I think that's the goal. It's every single guy in that lineup has a litany of ways that they can beat you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's easy to say, well, yeah, just go get a bunch of Soto and Judges. Well, those guys are one of one for a reason.
Yeah, those guys are pretty rare.
But the biggest thing for them is, they can take you deep. You know what they can also do? They can work a 10-pitch walk. They could also put a double in the gap. They could also get on base. They're going to set up other things. If you got guys on in front of them, guess what? They're going to bring them in. That's what a complete hitter should look like. You should have 9 guys, and no lineup really ever does, but you should have as many guys in your lineup where it's, look, if I just leave something over the plate, this is going 800 feet.
Yeah.
If I try to pitch to him away, he's just going to take me the other way, and that could be a double down the line. If there's, the old expression is, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I think there's more than one way to be a good offense. And I don't know if they've really gotten to that place yet.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't seem like they have, and this has kind of been. It's kind of been like what they. This has kind of been like their MO as far as like as far as the Boone years goes. It seems like they always get off to a super hot start, and then they have a slide at one point where it looks like they might never break out of it, and then they manage but then they they win 90 to 100 games, and then they come up they come up short in the playoffs, and part of that does fall on Judge. His playoff numbers definitely leave something to be desired. You know, for all the shit people give, for all the shit people give Giancarlo Stanton about, like, how much money they gave him and how he hasn't really proved to be worth the contract. They're missing him a lot right now, and he does produce when it matters the most. So. But also at the same time, like, I don't feel like him getting hurt should have, like, sent them into like spiraling into the abyss the way it seemingly has. Although I feel like the slide had already started, like, before he got hurt, but then, like, after he got hurt, it like, I feel like it exposed, like, okay, like, this is, like, really bad now.
It is interesting as an outsider to see the way Yankee fans kind of view Stanton in that respect, because I think especially with all the injuries that have kind of added up over the years, like, yeah, that he's not going to be 2014 Stanton anymore. Like, one, aging would do that anyway, but the natural aggregation of all those injuries, that'll do something to a guy. I mean, and the strikeouts have always been a thing with him. Even when Miami, yeah, he'd give you those moonshots, but you could strike him out. He's not as complete of a hitter as he was, or even when he first got to New York, but I'm right there with you. In terms of the postseason, just in since he got there, Stanton's always been the guy that if you were playing the Yankees or just watching the game, you're like, well, this is probably their shot right here. If it's a tie game or they're down 1 or 2, like, well, this is going to be their route into the ball game back here, because, quite as it's kept, like, I know Judge has a couple wild card games, but we look at some of those Astros series and
he does tend to disappear, in the when it comes to the ALCS. And I could talk all night about what's wrong with the Yankees and how to fix them, but we do have other topics that we need to move on to. So let's talk a little bit about the All-Star games coming up. So the rosters have been announced, and naturally, anytime the All-Star rosters come out, it's always fun to look at the roster and see who got snubbed. And I mean, I guess we could start with Francisco Lindor, because I feel like he's probably the biggest and most obvious snub on the list. And I mean, granted the other shortstops that made the NL roster, they're all pretty good. I mean, you got Trey Turner, Elly De La Cruz. I thought Elly De La Cruz, I thought he was just like kind of a Linsanity run guy last year, but he's proven to be really good. And CJ Abrams of Washington, but
they needed one and he should be there. So there's somewhere it's like, okay, yeah, Elly had to be there. CJ Abrams, everybody's supposed to get one. And it's not as if CJ Abrams is a charity case. So, like, I want to make that, like, he's been good. Turner, I feel like it's kind of devolved into a Philly love fest the last few years. Like, he's fine. He also missed, like, 40 games? I think Lindor's played every game to this point. And it's also kind of, again, I just want to point this shirt here as I see here. He's good. I want people to know that. It's also kind of an amalgamation of the last 3 years, because he was good last year too. Didn't get in. He should have been there in 2022 when it's been his best year to date as a Met. Didn't get in. Got McNeil and Marte went ahead of him. And it's just one of those things. And you'll see the haters come out and it's like, oh, well, what about his April? And someone posted it, and I was trying to find it ahead of the show tonight. If you take out his first 2 weeks, which also starts in March, his April's not even as bad as they're telling you it was. It's really been since like April 11th. He's been a above average starting shortstop like usual. He's got 27 doubles now. He's got over 15 home runs. He's got over 15 steals. I think they said in the last 40 years, he's the only player to have those 3 numbers and not make the All-Star team. Add to the fact that he's at worst the second best defensive shortstop in the National League. I know people will point to Dansby Swanson, and and it's a fair case. But he is one of the 10 best defenders at any position in the league. I'm obviously biased being a Met fan, but watching what he does every day and watching the kind of player he is, and just like we talk about all stars, I think that's part of it too. You want the people that represent your game well. I think that's what makes Lindor enjoyable too. Is he's fun to watch both in the field and at the plate and on the bases. He has been the player. I know people will always look at the contract number, and sometimes there's no getting past it with some people, but just because maybe the rest of this team hasn't performed as well as they could have doesn't mean he hasn't. And I'd hate to think where this team would be if they had a replacement level shortstop right now. They're one game under 500 with him playing really well, a 3-WAR player already. I mean, if you had a run of the mill, I don't know, I'm just gonna grab a name at random, put like Zach Cozart at shortstop right now. I wonder where no disrespect to Zach Cozart, I wonder where this team would be right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Zach Cozart is kind of the perfect example of like the replacement in the wins above replacement stat. So I'd say they probably have like 3 or 4 less wins. Maybe more.
Zach Cozart's fine. You could do worse. You also know you can do better.
Yeah, but as far as the other shortstops that made it to the All-Star game, I mean, yeah, Abrams is having a very good year, but I mean, at the same time, even if you just look at like the season numbers for this year, and obviously it is just based off this year. I mean, Abrams is a little bit better in, he's a little bit better in some categories, but I feel like you could really make a case. You could really make a case for either player, and and if you're talking about, and I mean, they probably just got him, like you said, they probably just got him in because they had to pick someone from the Nationals, and he would be the obvious choice. But I mean, you could really make an argument for either player, and I mean, Lindor is, I'd say he's the better defender, at least at this point in their careers. I'd say he's a better defender than Abrams is, and then if you're talking about marketability, and the whole purpose of the All-Star game is entertainment, I'd say that it's kind of a no-brainer to put Francisco Lindor in, but yeah, for whatever reason, I mean, I'd say he's more deserving to be in the All-Star game than Pete Alonso is, but it also kind of just seems like they put Pete in to get him to participate in the home run derby, which we will get to.
Career low for Pete, and it's just under 800. I mean, that's the bar that Pete set. And again, I don't think Pete's been outright terrible this year by any means. But if you tell me the Mets have to send just one guy, and it still might change. I mean, I've certainly been vocal about it online, but the people have pointed. Fernando Tatis Jr. made the roster. He's not going to be there. Mookie Betts is on the roster, but he's not going to be there because he's out. Like Brandon Nimmo has a very good case too. It's been one of, I would say, maybe at worst, one of the 10 best outfielders in the National League this year. And obviously you can't take 10 outfielders, but not all of them are going to go. Some are going to opt out. Some are hurt, as we've already seen. But if you told me the Mets have to take just one guy to the All-Star game, I think I'd put Lindor or Nimmo ahead of Pete Alonso.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. Even and I'm definitely not a fan of Brandon Nimmo, but I would say that he deserves he definitely deserves consideration for that. But at the same time,
there's a perfect example, by the way, of when we talk about hitting development. Nimmo for a long time was just a slap hitter that, like, if you got any power from him at all, that was a plus.
Yeah.
And over the past 3 years has turned into a pretty consistent 20 to 25 homer guy. He's never been the stolen base threat I thought he'd be, but you always know you're going to get the walks from him. I mean, he's almost always around 400 on base, but now he's enough of a power threat. You have to be careful with him more than you ever would be before, because he might take a yard.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, he was always kind of like just a slap shit singles guy, and then all of a sudden he's hitting bombs, and I feel like this year particularly he's been hitting home runs at a pretty high clip. Like he might actually, I mean, he's probably on pace to hit the most home runs he has in any season in his career this year. Like just looking at his stats, like his career high is 24 from last year, and he already has 14. So,
And I think he added one tonight.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if Baseball Reference is counting that. If that, if they've updated their stats, but yeah, you could definitely make a case for Nimmo as well. As far as other, are there any? Was there anyone else maybe not Mets players that you felt maybe got snubbed from the All-Star game, or anyone that you feel like should have been there that got left off, or anyone that's on an All-Star team that you feel like shouldn't be there?
I kind of hinted at it before, but the love fest with the
Philly
Phillies,
Love Fest.
like Matt Strom's a good reliever. Jeff Hoffman, like, great comeback story for him because he was a top 10 pick once. Looked like he was about to wash out, and now he's a legitimately good reliever for the Phillies, which hasn't always been their forte. There's I don't know if we need to have that many relievers at the All-Star game, because I think if there's
You really don't.
they are never going to let the game end in a tie again. So you don't need to have 15 relievers. And I get, like, Bryce should be there. I don't know if Trey Turner should be there just on the games missed. Like, again, still a good player, but like I think part of being an all-star, it's popularity, but also, like, all right, who's killing it this year? Trey Turner's been good this year. I don't know if he's been killing it, and also he's missed half the season to this point. I like that, to me, matters. I would say you look at Christian Walker in Arizona. We look at first baseman who should have went. Christian Walker absolutely has a case. Ronel Blanco for the Astros threw a no-hitter this year.
Yeah,
first start of the year, right out of the gate, threw a no-hitter. Been pretty good since, and he doesn't go.
And I think that's still the only no-hitter that's been thrown this year.
I would look. Corey Seager, I think, maybe not quite at, like, if you would say last year was a 10 out of 10 season for Corey Seager, because any other non-Ohtani season, Corey Seager is your MVP of the AL by some distance, and then was World Series MVP, and he was great. And if last year was a 10 out of 10 for him, I'd say this year's an 8 out of 10 for him. Corey Seager not being in there, especially when the Texas Rangers are hosting and they're the defending champion, I kind of feel like Corey Seager kind of has to be there based on that. You look at some of the pitchers. I know Skeens is going for the Pirates, and that's probably going to be the one draw. Mitch Keller, I think, deserves a case. Luis Hill, I think, has a case. I know the last month or so hasn't been great for him. I think Hill has the same case that Nestor Cortez had a couple years ago. I think he deserves to be in the mix. Jack Flaherty, Sonny Gray should be in there. As far as guys that I don't think deserve to be there, I mentioned the Philly guys, but most everything else I think tracks. For the most part, I think they were pretty good this year about that sort of thing, at least in terms of guys that can be there who aren't injured. So by and large, they were pretty good.
Yeah, as far as people that were injured or didn't opt out, one person I would say I don't think has any business really being there, and there might be a little bit of recency bias in this, but I don't really think Marcus Semien really warrants. I don't think he really warrants being in the All-Star game this year. It's like, if you were gonna pick someone from Texas, it 1,000% should have been Seager over him. I mean,
or Josh Smith.
Or Josh Smith. He's having a solid year. I picked him up in one of my fantasy leagues. He is productive. But I mean, looking at Simeon's numbers, 12 home runs, all right, like, that's fine. But like, there are definitely players that have more. He's only batting .232, and he's got really none of his numbers are really like blowing your mind or screaming all-star. I mean, he's got the 12 home runs, 232 average. He's got 299 OBP, and his slugging is only 380. So
he might be in, and I'm not saying he's there yet, but he might be trending toward the Patrick Corbin category of, all right, we don't care what that contract was. He won us a World Series. We're good.
Yeah.
Because he was good the first year they had him, and then he was still excellent last year. But like, he helped you win a World Series. Like, who cares?
Oh yeah,
that does not matter.
You'll take the the downfall after that. But yeah, I don't think he really had much of any business being there. He's just a reserve, so it's not like they gave him the starting spot. But
yeah,
I would agree. There's probably too many Phillies in the All-Star game. Like Bryce Harper, and I do think Alec Bohm is deserving. Trey Turner is deserving depending on what context you look at it from, but like he is maybe someone that you could leave off. I think Ranger Suarez and Zach Wheeler definitely deserve to be there.
Yes.
And, Matt Strahm, I would give it to him. I don't think Jeff Hoffman needs to be there. I think that
heck, if you're going to take 2 extra Philly pitchers, Christopher Sanchez probably should be there over one of the relievers.
Yeah, I would agree, especially because each All-Star team, it's like they have 8 starters and then 4 relievers. So it's like there's really there's 12 pitchers on each side, and it's like there's
nobody's going more than 2 max.
Yeah. So there's really no point in having that many pitchers, but that could be like a different discussion entirely if you're gonna overhaul the rosters for the All-Star game. But yeah, those are a few that stand out. As far as people that are there that maybe shouldn't be there.
I remember back in the day, and I felt like it happened multiple times where the Pirates, and this is when they were, I think this was before McCutchen got there, where they were truly wretched, would have a reliever go, and he'd be their closer.
Yeah, like Melancon, that was during McCutchen.
Oh, not even, because Melancon was good, but it would be someone like Mike Williams or Evan Mead,
Jason Grilli,
and you'd be like, you look at their numbers and you're like, that's all they could get. Like, I get the Pirates are bad. They only got him, and on more than one occasion, that All-Star would either be traded or flat out released by the end of July.
Yeah,
Mike Williams to me is forever burned in my brain because it was like he had an ERA like in the high 4s as a closer, and he got hit in the All-Star game, and I think by the end of July was off the team.
It's like they basically kept him on the team to have representation at the All-Star game, and then they they parted ways and got his money off the books or got whatever they could for him like as soon as they could. It's like at least put Jack Wilson or like Jason Kendall out there or something.
Man, like if Freddie Sanchez is not busting his ass for this, like what are we doing?
Exactly. But moving on to another All-Star topic, we got Pete Alonso back in the Home Run Derby, which is as we previously discussed and hinted at, this is basically probably the only reason why Pete was elected to the All-Star team. But Pete Alonso back in the Home Run Derby. I believe he's going for his 3rd Home Run Derby title.
And I get it. I will sound biased here, and I may sound like I'm hating. I'll accept those charges. It's amazing to me to see people rolling their eyes where it's like, oh, well, here's the home run list. It's going to be Bobby Witt and Gunnar Henderson and Alec Bohm and Pete Alonso's in there. And as soon as they announce Pete being in there, you just hear the collective, oh, brother.
Do you mean from Mets fans or from
from baseball collectively? Fans.
Yeah,
I get Mets fans not want him to be in there because it's like, hey, don't mess up your swing because we've seen it happen with other guys. I get that. But like people are like, oh, this guy's showing up because he wants to win the home run derby. Oh, okay, cool. It's like I thought we wanted people that wanted to be in this. Like, don't we want the people that are the best home run hitters. Like, that's the whole point of watching this. We want these guys to be out there with metal bats. We want this in Colorado every year because we want to see how far this stuff goes. Here is a dude who, more than anybody in that field, wants to be doing nothing but that. He's out there strictly to hit the fuck out of that ball as far as it can go. And people are just like, oh, this guy again. Like, this is why, like, I know Met fans get a rap for being whiny and defensive. Like, that's why. Like, Pete Alonso lives to be in the home run derby. It's what he loves doing more than anything else. And people are just like, they give him the JJ Watt treatment, and I don't understand it. And I've seen the discussion today where it's like, well, Griffey did it 8 times. It's like, all right, that's not the best comparison. We're not comparing Pete to Ken Griffey, who universally beloved. Like, I understand that. But again, it's like, if people treat him like he's JJ Watt, like he's out there trying way too hard to do this. This is what he does.
Yeah, and like,
would people have been upset if Mark Reynolds or Mark Trumbo were in the Derby every year? That was all they did.
Yeah, and it's like, if it wasn't, and if they weren't complaining about Pete Alonso being there like every year and trying too hard to win it or whatever, they would complain about how the home run derby is like this novelty thing that doesn't matter and nobody takes seriously. So you need
getting the dunk contest treatment.
Yeah, so you need someone like Pete Alonso that does take it seriously and wants to be in it and wants to win as many of these things as possible. And
I totally get guys that don't want to be in it because it's like, hey, I've seen other guys get their swings messed up the rest of the year. I totally understand if you're going for something. Like, Ohtani's not in it this year, and I get Ohtani being like, hey, look, I might actually win something for a change. I'm not screwing the Dodgers up just to do this. I totally understand that.
Yeah, so I'm reading an article right now, and it actually says, so it has like the contestants, and it says Shohei Ohtani is interested in being in it.
Oh, there was someone had a
him and Teoscar Hernandez
already declined.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I forget who, but they were like, here's the All-Stars who have already said they're not doing it, and these are the All-Stars that have accepted, and here's the All-Stars who could do it. And there was still, because I don't know if the field's official yet as of recording. But yeah, it's much like the dunk contest. Like, yeah, I want to see the guys. I remember there used to be times where it was like the one that stands out to me is the peak of the steroid era is like 98 and 99. And I remember in 99 they had it at Fenway Park. So it's like, of course, you have Griffey and Sosa and McGuire, and it's like, here's John Jaha from the Milwaukee Brewers. He hits 245, but he's got 29 home runs in the first half. It's like, sick. Sounds great. Get him out there.
Yeah.
Like, give me, like, that's the whole point. It's entertainment value. And if a guy sees the response, like, you see guys in the dunk contest where it's like, they clearly get like, hey, I'm supposed to put on a show. Pete clearly understands, hey, the home run derby is a show. I'm going to give it to him. And people hate
it. Yeah. There's just no pleasing some people. Like, regardless of what it is, they'll find something to complain about. It's either this is like an unserious event and no one cares, or, oh, look at this guy trying way too hard at this unserious event that no one cares about. So it's like, which one is it at a certain point? But yeah, it's I guess Ohtani is unlikely to be in it because of his rehab with the Tommy John.
That's fair.
Yeah, but it hasn't said that he's like officially declined, and then I guess there's possibilities. Apparently Teoscar Hernandez wants to be in it, but he's not I guess he's not an official participant yet. I mean, I would like to see Aaron Judge in it. I mean, like, I kind of have mixed feelings about it, but I mean, like, he's leading the league in home runs, so I kind of feel like he should be there. And he's like the face of baseball, so I feel like he should be there from that perspective. But I also get why he's not. I also get why he's not doing it, because he did it in 2017 as a rookie when he went up against Giancarlo and won. aside from the derbies that Pete has won, I feel like that's like one of the more memorable home run derbies like of recent memory. But apparently Judge is not gonna do a home run derby again until the All-Star game goes back to New York.
I mean, and I don't blame him because I mean,
Yeah,
I certainly
and
can't. I can't
did,
relate to being able to hit home runs on cue like that.
yeah,
But
and it
especially when
definitely messed
you're
with
the
his
guy,
swing like the second half of that year.
yeah, when it's like when you're the guy that everyone came to watch, and it's like, all right, hit 45 of these in a row. Like, I could see where like that gets taxing, even for as much as he might enjoy it. Like physically, that's pretty demand, especially with the timed format now. I'm sure that does take a toll on you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Which format do you like better? Do you like the timed format, or do you like the 10 outs?
I like either of the old ones. I don't like what they're trying to do with. I don't even know what the point of these changes that they're going to insert this year are. And I felt like most people were pretty happy when they went to the time format a few years back. I feel like we got better endings. I feel like we got more competition because guys were going in. You know, if you were batting second in the final or you were in the semifinal and you knew, okay, I'm going up against such and such. All right, I got to beat
This is how many I
31.
need.
And
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
have
okay,
3
if you get
minutes.
to 26, you're gonna get an extra minute because you hit this marker. We're gonna give you an extra minute now. I feel like most people were pretty happy with that. It felt like ESPN tinkered with this just to do it for no other reason, with something that I think most of us liked.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I don't even really. I'm not even really sure what the what changes to the format it is. But I mean, yeah, it looks like so. The first 2 rounds, each hitter will have 3 minutes or 40 total pitches, whichever one comes first, with one 40-second timeout that can't be used during your bonus time, which you get if you hit a home run longer than 425 feet. And then the finals, you only get 2 minutes or 27 pitches, whichever comes first, excluding bonus time. So I mean, it's still timed, but it seems like it's still timed, but it seems like they like kind of tinkered with it, like just for the fuck of it, like just
The pitch limit I don't get because what are some of the ones that we remember the most in recent years? I mean, it was what, like I think the first one that Pete won, I think he had 88 in total, and I think Vlad Jr. had like 91. I mean, they were truly insane numbers. Or I remember even going back to the traditional 10 out format was, I mean, and it was the last year at Old Yankee Stadium. Like Josh Hamilton hit like what? How many in a row? Like it was like 20. It was some truly insane number. It's like instead of just putting a cap on it, where it's like when you see guys putting on displays like that, where it's like, this guy just hit like 13 in a row, or this guy's got 22 in a round and he's still got 8 outs to go. Those are what you remember. And I feel like, well, nope, it's definitely 40. It does not matter what he did. It doesn't matter what kind of heater he's on. That's it. That's when you're taking the fun out of it.
Yeah. It seems like they're definitely taking away like an element of the excitement. I mean, I guess we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it should be it should be a fun home run derby. I would expect I think I would expect Pete to win it again, even though it is kind of a total crapshoot. It looks like he'll be the favorite from a gambling perspective to win the home run derby.
Slick. I think Gunnar Henderson might pull that off. He is on some kind of heater right now.
He is, yeah, he is, and it's and I mean it's a ballpark he's relatively familiar with. You know, probably plays there. He plays there more often than Pete Alonso does. So you know, maybe there's something to that there. But I mean, if Pete gets that same personal pitcher that he had those years that he wins that he
Dave
won,
Douse.
yeah, that guy. I think it's a lock for him because they seem to have the chemistry when it comes to that.
Yeah, they had his cousin up there. I think I don't know if it was his cousin either in 22 or if it was last year. It was like His cousin was up there like he was trying to get outs in the 8th inning. Like, what are we doing throwing off the plate here, pal? Like,
yeah. Anyway, yeah. So home run derby should be fun. That will be coming next week after the Mets and after the Mets, Yankees, and rest of MLB finish off their finish off the quote unquote first half of the season. So speaking of the first half of the season, who would you say biggest surprise in baseball in the first half and the biggest disappointment?
Biggest surprise has been the AL Central being this loaded. Now, I think there's rightfully a certain amount of skepticism for, okay, if these guys hold up, what's Kansas City going to look like in the postseason? Because this is a new Kansas City team coming in this time. Is Minnesota going to be any different than they've been in recent years? I think people are rightful to look at the Guardians and go, okay, we know what you are.
Yeah.
But for both of these teams for all three of those teams to have been good as they were, and with the changes to the schedule in recent years, I don't even think you can really look at them and say, oh, well, they just feasted on the Central. When it's time for them to play the real big boys, we know how this goes. They might be Fugazi. They might be. There's a decent chance. I look at Kansas City. Bobby Witt's tremendous. They still have Salvador Perez. MJ Melendez is a prototypical power hitter. They've got a great 1-2 at the top of their rotation. Cole Reagan's deservedly an all-star. Seth Lugo has revitalized his career. You still have Brady Singer. So they have a legit 3-man rotation in a playoff series if they get there. To me, to see the AL Central be as strong as it is, to me certainly has been the biggest surprise more than anything. And I would say the biggest disappointment out of anybody, in total, it's probably the Blue Jays. And I realize that, the AL East is what it is. And it's probably never been as good as it's been right now in terms of the talent for all 5 teams. But if you told me on opening day with that roster and that talent, even knowing that Vlad Jr. maybe hasn't continued ascending the way we thought he was going to, if Bo Bichette's development has kind of stalled a little bit, even knowing that Springer hasn't been exactly the guy they thought they signed. If you told me with that roster, yeah, we're going to get to around the All-Star break and they're going to be 41-49, I would have said, well, how many guys got hurt? That's not exactly true with them. They've been relatively healthy. They're just underperforming, and they might be the first team to sell off. You look across baseball, and there's maybe only a handful of teams that are truly out of it already. I'm about ready to put the Blue Jays there.
Yeah, especially being in the AL East. Like, maybe if they were in a weaker division, they might, like maybe if they played in the NL West, you'd be like, okay, like they're not totally dead. But yeah, being dead last in the AL East, which is going to have at least 2, maybe 3 playoff teams come out of it. It's very difficult to very, very difficult to like really fathom them digging themselves out of that hole. And yeah, it's kind of crazy like that they've been as bad as they've been and they haven't really had like a catastrophic injury or anything like that. They just for whatever reason have been playing bad baseball. For my biggest surprise and disappointment, I'm going to keep it in the NL Central for both of them. So my biggest surprise is the St. Louis Cardinals being as good as they are. And it probably shouldn't be that surprising considering just how historically well run and how good they are historically at like drafting and developing prospects. But going into this year, I really did not think the Cardinals were going to be a good team. I kind of thought that they would be I kind of thought, and I feel like a lot of people kind of thought that they would be like a last place team in this division, and that that they were going to be selling like that. That like I remember before they kind of solidified themselves. Everyone was kind of like, oh, who's going to trade for Paul Goldschmidt? Is Nolan Arenado going to stay there? Like, they kind of just had all these players that. that people were like, all right, like, who are we going to poach, as far as contending teams go. But they've, they've been playing really well. They're pretty firmly in. They're pretty firmly in it right now. They hold the second wild card spot. I mean, they're not firmly in it. No one's really firmly in it, but they're 6 games over 500. They have the second. They have the second wild card spot, and they've had, like they always do, they just pull like random players out of their ass that end up being good, like Kyle Gibson and Ryan Helsley, both having pretty tremendous years. So
and they've done this with Contreras missing a month and a half because he had a broken wrist, and Paul Goldschmidt's been down by his standards.
Yeah, Paul Goldschmidt has like not been good this year, and they're still and they're still managing to string together all these wins. And I think like the big issue for that seems like the biggest issue for teams like the Mets and for the Pirates, like it's like they're winning and they're staying in it. The problem seems to be that is just that the Cardinals just never seem to lose.
Well, that's the other thing in the NL is really there's 2 teams right now that you can genuinely say are out of it. The Rockies and the Marlins are already done, but everyone else legitimately has a case to say, hey, we're not that far off that third wild card spot. We put together 2 good weeks and we're right there. So you have 1, the competition to deal with, and 2, you don't have any sellers really. I mean, the Rockies, I would say, and really across MLB, it's the Rockies, the Marlins, the A's, and I think there's another team in the AL West I'm forgetting, and the White Sox. The White Sox, obviously, and they, they've got Crochet and Robert, but outside of that, those other teams that I listed that are already out of it, who are you taking? There's not even really a trade market yet because nobody wants to sell, because now with the third wild card, everyone can legitimately say, hey, look, we put together 2 or 3 good weeks. We're in there.
Yeah. And then, as far as my biggest disappointment, keeping it in the NL Central, I'd say the biggest disappointment of this season has been the Chicago Cubs. So the Cubs, I think, were a team that I think with the moves that they made in the offseason, with the money that they spent and invested, I don't think this was a team that people were expecting to be at the moment dead last in the NL Central, 10.5 games behind the Brewers. And I don't know what it is, but it just seems like something. It just seems like they're just missing like one of everything. Like their starting pitching is pretty good. I mean, granted, Justin Steele missed like the first month or so of the season, but he's been back, and like he's looked pretty good since coming back for the most part.
Shota's been the best signing out of anybody.
Yeah, Shota. Yeah, Imanaga has been I mean, he's been unreal, although he as of late has not been as good with the whole ever since I saw the graphic. Is like ever since he met Angel Reese, he hasn't been pitching as well. So
I mean, listen, it makes you wonder if he's built for it. Just saying.
It's a valid question. But I mean, still his numbers are overall very good, and Jameson Taillon's like quietly having a pretty good year. He's like having like kind of like a renaissance season, I guess you could say.
Been pretty solid.
Yeah. And then you look at and then I mean you look at their lineup. I mean, I'd say that's part of the issue is that I feel like they're missing like one other guy aside from like Cody Bellinger that can just like go yard at any given time.
The crazy thing is Christopher Morel should be that guy.
Yeah, like he's supposed to be that guy, but he's like,
okay, this guy can hit 15 homers and steal 35 bases and hit enough to where it's not a, you take the strikeouts. He's still hitting enough homers this year and still getting the steals, but now he's hitting under 200, and it's the skill set's great, but it's like you've got to at least be league average. Like I can't, like, the homers and steals are great, but it's like if I'm getting that once a week out of you, like that's not going to cut it.
Yeah. So he's obviously he's only very occasionally doing those things, and for the most part he's just struggling. You know, I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. You know, maybe it's like something similar to Volpe, where he minus all the pressure of like playing in New York or whatever, but maybe there's just something that's not there, or something that he needs to work out. Would have to look a little more into that. And then I would say the biggest issue though for the Cubs has been their bullpen. And I think that's where, like the root of a lot of the problems that they are having. So yeah, I would say for the money they spent and to be in last place in a division that's as weak as it is, they would probably be my biggest disappointment.
And when you say money, we're not just talking about that they re-signed Bellinger and they went and got Shota. And, you know, Bellinger hasn't been as good as he was last year, but he's still been pretty good. Shota, like we said, has been excellent. They also went out and got, I mean, if you want to say Craig Counsell isn't the best manager in baseball, he's no worse than what, third? He's certainly on the very short list. You would think for a team that was one bad 2-week stretch away from being in the playoffs last year, it's the reason the Diamondbacks made it. You would think, okay, well, I think everyone kind of agreed, yeah, they do need a new manager, and if you're going to go get one, go get the best. You would think,
you might as well.
Like, okay, what's that going to be worth? 5, 6, 7 wins there, and right now they might break even if things are lucky.
If they're lucky, they'll break even. But I'm glad you mentioned the Diamondbacks, because that's a great segue into our next and final topic. So this year's Diamondbacks. So last year the Diamondbacks were kind of the team that came out of nowhere, and they snuck into the playoffs with like 83 wins. And then they got hot and they rode that wave all the way to the World Series, where they ran into a Texas Rangers team that was just better than them, and they lost. So what team would you say has the potential to be this year's version of that, a team that can kind of come out of nowhere and, maybe make some noise if they get in?
We did kind of touch on it a little bit before, and I think there's two candidates, and they're both in the Central. Kansas City has that potential because, they have 3 guys in their rotation right now that whoever they would go up against, they would feel pretty good about who they're throwing that day. Cole Reagans, it looks like a future ace. I would say argue is one right now. Seth Lugo is an experienced guy that's having the best year of his career, and Brady Singer may not be as good as Cole Reagans, but I feel like in any playoff matchup,
very solid number 3.
Yeah, you'd be like, okay, if we can get 6 out of him, we're going to still be in this game, which in the playoffs is huge. The Royals are always going to have a bullpen. I know that very well. And then, of course, maybe the best shortstop in baseball that no one talks about, and Bobby Witt Jr. I feel like if he played somewhere besides Kansas City, people would talk about him a lot more in terms of the skill set that he has and for everything that he's done so far in those first 3 years. You still have guys like Michael Garcia, and of course Salvador Perez, still really good in his old age. I say that like he's not younger than me, but Salvador Perez is someone who's been there and has done it on those stages. The Royals, to me, feel like a team that you could all of a sudden just look up and go, how'd they get in the ALCS? And then in the NL, right where you are, Chris, the Pirates have it. And maybe they're not as much of a, I genuinely think no one at this point last year would have said, hey, yeah, the Diamondbacks are going to do what they're going to do. People were talking about the Pirates because of Paul Skeens, but there's so much more than him. I know Jared Jones just went on the IL. Hopefully they get him back. If they get him in the rotation, that's a legitimate 3-man between him, Keller, and Skeens. I don't think there's any team.
Yeah, it gives them in a best of 3 wild card series. That's a huge advantage. In a 3 out of 5 division series, still a pretty big advantage. It might get a little murky when you get to a 7-game series, but
we've seen how teams flex their rotations now.
See what happens. Yeah. I would say the only thing like the Pirates, they definitely have the pitching to go on a run if they make it to the playoffs. I just don't know if they have the hitting to do it.
Now they do have Brian Reynolds, but I see what you mean, but they probably would do well to go get one more bat. I've seen people talk about it online. They would seem like such a perfect team to go get Luis Robert. Like that would just make you talk about elevating a lineup in a way that few bats would. I mean, just having that middle there between Reynolds and having Robert and O'Neill Cruz, who I think people have kind of forgotten about because he was hurt for so much of last year. I just watched him this past weekend. Still a guy I'm sufficiently afraid of coming up to the plate late in the game.
Yeah.
That's all of a sudden a very legitimate 3, 4, 5 in an order that you wouldn't want to deal with. They've got a couple of good arms in the bullpen. Holderman is a great eighth inning guy, and I feel like every single fan base in baseball can agree that the Pirates probably need to upgrade their closer if they want to be serious about this.
Yeah, they definitely need to upgrade. They definitely need to upgrade. At least, they definitely need. I mean, I think Colin Holderman should maybe even be their closer from the standpoint of him being. And I think that as far as like baseball is played today, I don't really think like closers should even necessarily really be a thing. I think like you should just put your best reliever in at the highest leverage situation, like when you're facing like the heart of another team's lineup late in the game. Like you don't necessarily have to wait till the 9th inning to put that guy in. But I think it's like an issue with like the money that they get, and that, owners probably feel like, hey, I'm paying this guy to like close out games. I'm not paying however much money for, Edwin Diaz to come in and in the 7th inning.
I love when I know Buck did it a couple of times, and I know Mendoza's done it once or twice this year. I love bringing in Diaz in the 8th inning, or even there was a game, I think it was 2 years ago in LA. They brought him in the 7th where it was bases loaded, I think 1 out, and it was the heart of their order where it was Betts, Freeman, and Smith. And it's basically, hey, look, we got to put out this fire right now. We put out this fire, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you have to be bold, especially if you're a team that's serious about winning, to be like, hey, look, we may not know, we could be in a game right now in July. Home field could end up getting decided by one game, and everyone will always look at the games in September. But if you lose a team to this game, and guess what, they got home field on you by one game, those at bats matter too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of the way you should do it, and I think that's kind of what Holderman is for the Pirates right now. It's crazy to think that all it took for them to get that was Danny Vogelbach, but I will spare you, I guess, even though I didn't.
It's so frustrating to think, especially seeing JD Martinez this year on the Mets, to be like, we could have had him 2 years ago.
Yeah,
like, imagine what that would have done to that lineup to be that close. And we took a guy who won't swing the bat, and we gave up a really good setup guy to do it.
Yeah,
I'll never be talked off this point.
Yeah, so I feel like Holderman's definitely like their best reliever. Chapman, it kind of depends like what Aroldis Chapman you're getting. If he's hitting his spots and he's hitting the strike zone, he's still pretty goddamn good. And he helped another team end a World Series drought that lasted pretty much the entire lifespan of that franchise with the Texas Rangers. So could he do the same thing with the Pirates? I don't know. Probably not. But no, the Pirates, I think, are a good team, a good candidate for that. I would say.
Are they going to have an owner that's like, hey, you know what? Push the button. Let's go for it. Because we've seen this argument with Skeens. It's like, yeah, he's great right now. And he might hold up. It's like sometimes you get someone like Scherzer or Verlander that throws that hard and it never really catches up with them. But you're not guaranteed that. Opening day next year, Skeens' UCL could explode. We don't know. He's great today. And you got two other really good guys behind him today. Like, you're not promised this next year. You're the Pirates. And even if Skeens holds up, you're probably not going to pay him. Go for it.
Yeah, and you have these guys on their rookie deals. So they're not taking up a lot of money. It's probably, history tells us it's probably inevitable that these guys go get big contracts somewhere else, unless they are proactive in trying to extend them early and getting a deal, which they did do with a few of their players. They did sign Brian Reynolds to like an early 8-year extension, and they got a pretty good bargain with that. They also did the same thing with Ke'Bryan Hayes, which it's hard to say whether that was a good move or a bad move at this point. I would lean more towards a bad move, although he is one of the better defensive third basemen in the league.
It's good with the bad.
O'Neal Cruz is an interesting case because he has such a skill set, like just such a crazy good skill set. Like the bat speed is insane. He has like the highest. I think him and Giancarlo Stanton have like as far as like balls that were hit this year, they have like they both lead the league in like exit velocity.
Every ball he hit over the weekend against the Mets, every time it left the bat, you're like, oh no.
Yeah. So like he hits lasers,
but he's got it.
He's got a cannon for an arm too, and he can run, but it seems like fundamentally something is like not all there. Like he makes a lot of like he'll swing at like a lot of bad pitches, and like he'll like make a lot of like dumb plays in the field. But yeah, like the skill set's definitely there. So, the Pirates are a team that I could see if they do get in, I could definitely see them, like somehow you wake up one day and like the Pirates maybe are in the NLCS.
I would look at O'Neal Cruz, and I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about him largely because Ellie's in the same division and he may do the same things even better. And we forget that O'Neal Cruz lost most of last year to an ankle injury, which for his skill set's pretty important.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning, even coming into this year with Ellie, there was a huge sect of people who were like, what if he just had like you said, what if he just had a Linsanity run? What if he's just all speed? Turned out to be all right.
Yeah.
I think letting O'Neal Cruz have a full season healthy, and maybe it doesn't come this year, but maybe in 25, like it all clicks for O'Neal Cruz. It's just seeing someone who's built similarly to him that can do the same things and seeing it come together for him the way it has for Ellie this year makes me think that that's also in O'Neal Cruz too, and he might not be that far off.
Yeah, no, that's a good counterpoint to it too. Obviously the injury was a pretty big setback for him, and so he might just still be like, this might still be like the like getting reacclimated season for him, which for getting reacclimated season, he's still doing pretty well. As for me though, as far as teams that I could see being kind of this year's version of the Diamondbacks, the Royals are a good one, and I was going to pick them, but mainly for all the reasons that you said, but for the sake of being different, I got kind of an interesting one here. Now they might not be, the Diamondbacks as far as like, as far as like the element of surprise that they got in and got as far as they did, but I could see, but maybe within the context of this season, I could see the Houston Astros. I could see the Houston Astros getting in, and I could see them, being right back, like, right back in the ALCS and like giving teams fits in the playoffs. They've been much better as of late. They've gotten their run differential up to plus 37. They have like the pitching is there, like they just pulled Ronel Blanco out of their ass now, and like we discussed earlier, they always have like the complementary hitting. It seems to.
I mean, they're doing this with next to no starting pitching because Javier's out, McCullers is out, Verlander's like I think they've lost 6 or 7 starters already.
Yeah, they've lost the starters. So I feel like I could see them definitely like trading for someone at the deadline. And I feel like if they get Javier, well, Javier's done for the year, but if they were to get Verlander back, I could see them definitely being a threat to, I could see them definitely being a threat to, be right back in it like they have been, for so long. So, I would say that they could maybe be this year's Diamondbacks within the context of this season. In the NL, I would say, I mean, maybe the Diamondbacks could be this year's Diamondbacks. they're right there. They're only 2.5 games back out of the wild card spot, and Christian Walker has been tearing the cover off the ball all year. They have one of the best pitchers in baseball in Zach Gallen. I think
Corbin Carroll gets going at all.
He is falling off in a big way from last year. But yeah, I would say, if Corbin Carroll can get it going at all, if Zach Gallen can keep doing what he's doing, they have some, they have, if Jordan Montgomery can get back to what he was, if Paul Sewald can get his shit together in the bullpen, he can be a pretty good closer. So yeah, I mean, I feel like the Diamondbacks could very well just be the Diamondbacks.
I mean, we saw that rotation do it last year with, you'd have Gallen, you have Merrill Kelly, you have Fott. Like, Fott was able to handle that as a rookie.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone holds it against them. Like, all right, yeah, Texas was a better team. Like, it happens. Like, I don't hold that loss against them as like some sort of slight. Like,
no,
it's amazing that they were even there. Like, that's why we're talking about them in that context. But you've got a team now that has been there and done it before. You still have Ketel Marte, who's a deserving all-star this year in his own right. I would say they upgraded a little bit at third with Eugenio Suarez. Might not be as good of a total player as Evan Longoria, even at the end of his career, but Suarez is still a power threat that you very much have to deal with.
Yeah, he's still one of those guys like we were talking about, like someone who will come up and you'll just be like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this guy. Same with Jock Peterson, especially in the postseason. And then Lourdes,
there's a guy who deserves an all-star consideration this year. Jock Peterson's been terrific.
Yeah, no, that's very true. He's very quietly has had a pretty good year. 882 OPS, which there's definitely definitely some consideration that he could have gotten. And they have a pretty deep team too. Like you look at their bench and like they have the other Peterson, Jace Peterson on their bench, and they got Blaze Alexander and Randall Grichuk. So like they have the depth too, like that, potentially, they're a pretty banged up team right now, and they have some people that like aren't performing, but they're a team, I think, that if they could just get in and kind of get it together, they very well could go on another run like that.
And they still have Jordan Lawler, who's been their number one prospect for it was him and Carroll were 1 and 2 for a while there. And I think if they had everything the way they would have wanted it, he would have been their opening day shortstop this year. But I think he had a wrist injury like right at the end of spring training, and that cost him a month and a half. And then I think they were going to rehab him when he got over that. And it's, here, go play a couple weeks at AAA. And then I think he had a different injury from that. I don't think it was the wrist this time. But I think they were thinking that Jordan Lawler was going to be to this year's team what Corbin Carroll was last year, where it's, hey, we know you're good. We're going to play you right now. And just to imagine what a healthy Jordan Lawler would do for this team. He might still, we might get to the end of August, early September, and he's the September call-up.
Yeah, he could be a September call-up, and he could be someone that, he could potentially be someone that, propels them to that next level. So there's a lot of, definitely a lot of time to, still a lot of time for him to come up and do something this year. So yeah, a lot of, there are a lot of pretty good options for, for this exercise as far as this goes. A lot of teams that are in it, and a lot of different teams that are, built in different ways that if they were to get in, they could be very dangerous. But
that's with the new format now. I mean, even when we first did it 2 years ago, I don't think anybody expected Philly to turn into the team that they've become.
Right. Yeah. Because
they got in, they had the run they did, and now they're a juggernaut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they kind of set they kind of set the table in a way for like the formula. It'd be interesting to see like what if the Phillies, now that they're like this juggernaut team that's probably going to be like, you know, the number 1 seed in the NL, like it'd be interesting to see like what if they you know, if they take on the role that the Braves have taken and they're the team that chokes. You know, then,
I think that would be great, Chris. I think that would be very funny.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny. So and we're big fans of comedy here, so let's hope for that. You know, I don't really like anything that has to do with Philadelphia either, so I'm definitely you know, definitely rooting for that as well. But this has been a lot of fun. This has been episode 7 of Black Diamonds. Make sure that you are following these accounts that you see on the ticker below, at BDPod24 on Twitter, at MIPod69 on all socials, and at AscensionPodNW on Twitter. Do you want to let the people know where they can follow you, or do you want to...
If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at JD's Just Talking. That's capital J, capital D, S, Just Talking on Twitter. And if you want to follow my weird life on Instagram, I'm Jerry's Just Living. I'm not that interesting, but if you want to follow along, go right ahead.
Awesome. There you have it. I'll yeah, if you follow me, you follow me. If not, I don't really care. But make sure you're following the podcast and our you know, our accounts down here. Make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, and make sure you're subscribed to the Middle Initial Podcast channel as well. This has been episode 7. Jerry, thank you very much for coming up from your minor league assignment early and joining us. It's been a lot of fun, and we will do this again sometime.
I'm glad I could contribute. Hope to be back on the show soon.
Awesome. All right. Peace. Play out.